In the last session, for those of you that were there and those that were not, you missed it, a proud father, a successful businessman, and a great member of our executive committee introduced his daughter, and she was fabulous. She did a fantastic job. Katina, it was wonderful, very inspiring. And congratulations to your parents for raising you the way they did. We're so proud of you. In this session, we're going to have a proud son, very successful himself in his consulting business, introduce his proud dad, and in this case, George Postolos. You have seen his name and his picture in this document here. So we're very proud again to have this young man, Lucas Postolos, come up and introduce his dad. So Lucas, please come up.
Good afternoon. It's an honor to introduce my father, George Nicholas Postolos, who we affectionately call Baba, to give a brief talk today. George was born to Carrie and Luke Postolos in San Antonio, Texas in 1963. The first notable event in his life was in 1977 when he attended a wedding in Waco and met Nicole Triandafilou, who would then become Nicole Triandafilou Postolos. He then, for college, attended Harvard. After Harvard, he went to Harvard Law School. He worked at Wachtell, Lipton, Rosen & Katz for a few years in New York after finishing law school. While working there, he, through the Greek connection, got a job at the NBA and was the chief of staff for David Stern, the commissioner. While in that role, he was introduced to the owner of the Houston Rockets, which moved us to Houston in 1998, where he became president of the Rockets. He was 34 at the time when he became president of the Rockets. He was president of the Rockets for about 8 years. His next endeavor was he helped Jim Crane buy the Houston Astros. He served as president and CEO of the Astros as well. And then in his most recent phase of his career, he's had the joy of being a co-owner of a ticket company called Eventellect. And that's where he's been spending his time over the last decade or so. When he's not working, he is known around our family as the one who will always redirect the conversation at dinner back to God, even if the topic du jour is, who's your favorite Harry Potter character? But we love him so much. We're thrilled to be here to support him today. My sisters, Artemis and Kiriki, and my fiancée, Kira, the new addition to the family, are all in, as well, of course, his wife, Nicole, of 39 years. So with that, I want to introduce George Postolos.
Thank you for that introduction, Lucas. That's the first time I've ever been introduced by my son. It's appropriate. Because he surprised us several years ago by joining Leadership 100 before we did. I'm also grateful to him because he recognized each of the members of our family, so that's taken care of. And I won't make any serious errors today once that's taken care of. I want to thank Leadership 100 and in particular Paulette and Jim and the rest of the executive committee, and really all the members for that matter, for creating this community and for welcoming Nicole and our family so warmly this weekend, and we're very grateful to be here. The Fort Worth Star-Telegram wrote a profile about my yaya, and the title of the profile was Woman Without a Country. I've been hearing that story since I was a little boy, and I know many of you also have stories like that you grew up hearing about your grandparents coming to this country and their experiences before they came and once they got here. And that's really why we're in this room together, is because not only did they come here, but they built churches and they built communities and lives in this country, and they gave us a legacy. And Leadership 100 is about financial support for Orthodoxy and Hellenism, but equally important, perhaps more important, is that we tell those stories and that we pass that meaning down that we received so that it's carried forward by the next generation. And it's wonderful, this morning to hear from Katina. Lucas got a minute on stage, and just to look around and to see the younger people that are here, including our children, learn that storytelling and receive that meaning and that legacy that we got. So that's what I was going to focus my remarks on today. And I want to start by talking about my yaya, the woman without a country. She was born in Alatsata, and she had 6 siblings. And when she was 11 years old, they had to leave to avoid being killed by the Turks. And they had a difficult childhood, and she lost 4 of her 6 siblings. And by the time she was 15, she had lost her home, she had lost her father, and she was a refugee with a number of her family members. And they were looking for a different island to stay on in Greece, and then they eventually settled in Athens. And then for 11 years, she worked as a seamstress. She helped support her family and herself. And then she met a Greek who was living in Fort Worth, and he had come home to visit his family, and his name was George Phoenicius. She met him first time for a brief period, and then her uncle told her, "You're going to marry George." And that didn't land well with her, but that was what she did. And a month later, she came to Fort Worth, to the United States, and she never saw her mother again. And she didn't speak English, and she didn't know anyone else except for her husband. And so they had to make a life together in Fort Worth. And fortunately, they did. And they had a child right away, my mother, who was born in 1930. And I'm going to get to my mother in a minute, but the struggles that she went through to come here and to be part of that St. Dimitrios community in Fort Worth, and to be part of, Orthodoxy and Hellenism in the United States, it's like nothing I've ever experienced. It's nothing that any of our children have ever experienced, but that's what made our experience possible and what gives meaning to our lives. So we're seeing that kind of faith and courage in action is an important, it's defining for me. My dad grew up also, both of my grandfathers were in the restaurant business, and my dad grew up working in the family restaurant. And a story he always used to tell us was about a customer who came in and said, "Please pour me half a cup of coffee." And my dad poured him exactly half a cup of coffee. And when the gentleman finished his half a cup of coffee, he left a tip for $5. And this was, 60 years ago or more, so $5 was probably like $50 today. And on the way out, the customer said, "I always ask for half a cup of coffee because I like my coffee to cool off quicker, but I never get half a cup of coffee. So thank you for giving me exactly what I asked for." And that was a way that our Father taught us about moments of dignity and service. What about my Papu George, who I talked about a few minutes ago? He was born in Greece, and when he was 3 years old, he lost his father. And by the time he was 12 years old, he was supporting himself working in Palestine. And after a few years there, he heard about his uncle who was living in Fort Worth. And he went to Fort Worth because he heard there was work there. And then he established himself in Fort Worth. And he also enlisted, and he fought for the United States in World War I. And that's when he became a citizen. And he spent his life in Fort Worth. He was president of St. Dimitrios Parish 6 times. So similar to my yaya, he overcame many obstacles, and after 43 years in the United States, the Fort Worth paper, who liked to write about my grandparents, wrote a profile of my papu, and they talked about his experiences. He's quoted in that story, and I wanted you to hear his words. "America means everything to me. I think more than to native-born Americans. Through the generations, some folks have lost sight of the importance of the freedom we have in America." And reading those words helps me remember not to take for granted what we have. Okay. My dad, who I mentioned earlier, he liked to teach lessons, and he always told me 2 things. Once a year, I want you to change something fundamental about your beliefs, because it's a way for you to keep an open mind. And the second thing related, he said, is if you learn something from me, be especially critical about it, because I want you to have your own beliefs and to believe things because you understand them and you can act on them. And so be critical if it's just coming because it's for me as your father. And that's how you can stay humble and keep growing. And my memories of my father have been very important in my life, because I haven't had him for most of my life physically present, but I have had him spiritually. And I know as I'm telling these stories, I guess I have one more on this part, which is about our grandparents' generation and our parents, is my mother, who, remember, her mom had been in this country a very short time when she was born and only spoke Greek. And it was the beginning of the Depression. And so my mom went to school for the first time 5 years old in 1935, and she didn't speak any English. And it was everyone else in the class spoke English, and it was a huge struggle for her. And for 3 months, she went home every day and she said, "Mama, I have a headache." And my yaya was worried about her. She said 5-year-olds are not supposed to have headaches. And it was such a struggle. And the reason I know the details of this story is because when my mom was 18, she wrote about this experience. And the title of her, and it was published, and the title of her story was "Foreigner for 3 Months." And so at the end of 3 months, she was fluent in English. So she had to learn, and she learned. And her grade, she went to the top of the class. And in this essay that she wrote when she was 18 years old, she said, "I was now the master of 2 languages. What a relieved, strengthening, refreshing, proud feeling that was." So I want Kyriaki and Artemis and Luca and Kira and the other children, our children that are here, I want them to remember the struggle, that the love and the sacrifice that our parents and our grandparents made to establish Hellenism and Orthodoxy in our church and our parishes in this country, and that legacy that we have. Thank you very much. My sister is a speechwriter, and she told me that unsolicited applause or laughter is what you should look for. So you guys just gave me a big boost, and I needed it at that moment because I got to get through the second perspective, okay? And the second perspective is about our church and our parishes, because that's where the things that matter the most happen in our lives. And I was talking to Maria Pappas about this morning, and she was talking about weddings and how important they are to her and how much she loves attending them. But it's really true of all the events that matter the most. So I want to take you to 1983 in April 15th, 1983. And I was in my freshman dorm at Harvard College, and I got a call from my Aunt Ellie, the sweetest woman, and she said, "Your uncle and I are in Harvard Square, and I brought some homemade food, and I just want to drop it off from you. We had other business here. Can I stop by?" And I said, "Of course." And about 10 minutes later, she knocked on my dorm room door, and she came in, and she looked at me, and she immediately said, "Your father is very sick. We need to call your mother." And so my parents were in Paris on a vacation, and we called my mom, and she said to me, "George, he's gone." And so my dad, at 57 years old, had had a heart attack when my parents were at Notre Dame Cathedral and passed away. And we thought he was in perfect health. He had no history of a heart attack. So that was the most painful moment in my life. And who is there for you in those moments? And it's our community and our faith. And so the next day, my parents' kumbaro, Angelo Drosis, sent a plane to Boston, picked me up. The plane picked me up. I went to New York. His driver took me to the NBA offices in New York. I was in the lobby, and Angelo Drosis came out. He was the owner of the San Antonio Spurs at that time, and he was there for an owners meeting. And the commissioner of the NBA at that time was Larry O'Brien, and Larry O'Brien came out, and he came straight up to me and he shook my hand and he said, "I'm sorry for your loss. I understand your father was a very special man." And then Angelo said goodbye to the commissioner, and the two of us flew home. And my mom was still in Paris, because it's very hard to get a body from Paris, from France to the United States, if you die there. And we had to wait 10 days for my dad to get home. And after a few days, my mother did get home. But when I got home, my parents weren't there. My sisters were there. Thank you very much. And 36 people from our parish. And really, for those 10 days, every day there was food, and our friends were there, and they embraced us and they held us. And I'm telling these stories about my family, but really I'm telling these stories about our families. And the reason why we're in this room is because we appreciate what we were given, and we want to carry it forward. A couple of months after we buried my father, my mother received a letter from Father Nick Triandafilou, who was the parish priest in Houston at that time. And my parents were parishioners in San Antonio. My mother still has this letter. And every one of her children has the letter. And every one of her grandchildren. I want to read 3 lines from this prayer to you. They're short. Luke's translation, so suddenly and so prematurely, is shocking. It does not, however, interrupt your or his advancement in that pilgrimage from glory to glory. You too advance to a further level of glory as you faithfully and patiently, in the tones of Jesus' Blessed Mother, accept the mantle handed to you and the responsibility of carrying the torch and light of Christ without Luke's physical presence. I am sure that you will experience hours of pain and loneliness, but you will also experience the very sensitive touch of God as you embrace and lead your children to fulfillment of their adult lives. And that is what my mother did. And she's 96 years old. And she is still very sharp. She is ready to go be with my father. But that is what she did, and her ability to do that was because of our community and our parish and this wonderful priest who my parents knew through participating in a handful of events in the metropolis and in the archdiocese. That is our church that our grandparents built. And that is the church we owe our children, that nurtures and supports the parish priest who can do this kind of meaning in people's lives. Okay. You're gonna take that for me? Thanks, baby. Give me a napkin when you get a minute. Okay. It gets easier from here. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to tell Christine, my sister, the speechwriter. The third perspective is work and technology. They're tools to help us serve God and serve others. Our work and our technology, our worldly success should not define us. It's okay to possess things, just don't let them possess you. That's something Father Nick told me. Lucas mentioned many of the things, and I've been very fortunate in my career, and I've had many incredible experiences. I've met amazing people around the world and in our country, and I'm very grateful for those experiences. I'm just going to talk about the company that we have now. It's unified ticketing is what we do, and what that means, just to give you an example, if you wanted to go to a Phoenix Suns game, this is the problem that we're solving for content and for fans. If you wanted to go to a Phoenix Suns game and say the ticket was $100, you bought the ticket online, the StubHub, say, would keep $20 to $25. And then the seller of the ticket would keep $10 to $15. And then the team would spend $5 to $10 marketing the ticket. And so of the 100 that you spent, only 50 would be left over for the team to use. And so this is an example of marketing and distribution being very inefficient and expensive for a digital product to cost that much to get to the customer. There are a lot of reasons for that, but the solution is leveraging technology to make marketing and distribution of tickets more efficient. And it is something that is powered by machine learning and artificial intelligence and an understanding of how to support different properties in leveraging that. And that's what our company does. That's important because we want a system where instead of spending $100 for that ticket, you can spend $60, and instead of the team keeping $50, they can keep $55, because then a lot more people can or will spend $60 than $100. So more people will be able to go to the events. They will get a better deal. They'll be more happy about that. They're more likely to go back. And then the team will get both more money per ticket sold because they get to keep more of it, even though it's a lower price, because of the efficiencies in the distribution. And second, they'll get more people going to the events. So that's what our business does. So you call that revenue optimization, and that technology can help you with that, but it can't help you on the journey to the kingdom. It needs to be something that serves people and serves God, not something that defines us. Okay, we've talked about leadership, 100 being stewardship, and we've talked about giving our time and our talent and our treasure. I want to encourage you to tell the stories about your grandparents and your parents at home, and to repeat them, and to keep parish life central. I want to encourage you to open your heart to your parish, and to open your heart to your parish priest, and to open your heart to the metropolitan, the archbishop, the archdiocese, the patriarchate. I want to encourage you to let your children see you praying, fasting, giving alms, and to giving them the meaning. So tell stories, teach your children to be storytellers so they can carry our legacy forward of orthodoxy and Hellenism.